Even on the most cloudy day, the bright sign saying Castro could be seen from the Central City Park. That was the name of the richest family in the area. Laura Castro was the founder and the owner of the investment holding that had been increasing its stake in the oil industry every year. At the age of 75, she had her own spacious office on the top floor. At lunchtime, the woman used to stand in front of the panoramic windows for a long time, enjoying the view. She watched the birds fly, the people turn into tiny silhouettes, and the cars and buses get stuck in endless traffic jams. It was something Laura saw every day, but at that moment, she felt that her heart was beating in a special way. The old woman knew that with her power and money, she could buy whatever she wanted, or go on a trip around the world at any moment. But that day, she was feeling a little sad. When Laura turned to face her office, she saw an old photograph of her family standing on her table. It pictured her husband Lucas and her children whom she loved deeply, Anna, Raul, and Roberto. Seeing them smiling in the picture upset the woman even more, because she hadn't seen them happy for a long time. Feelings of nostalgia and loneliness filled her heart. "Lucas, look at everything we've built. We're millionaires, my love," Laura sobbed, hugging the photo tightly. "But you're no longer here. All I have now are these walls around me, my employees, and all the computers. How did it happen, honey? All this money can't get me a chance to see you again, even for a moment." Laura's husband died 10 years ago of stomach cancer. Despite all the money, and the assets, and the success, he was powerless in the face of the terrible disease. Laura's children lived in the same city, getting huge amounts of money for their involvement in the family business. Nevertheless, they seemed to have forgotten about their mother's existence a long time ago. They didn't express any interest in her affairs or her health. They never came to visit her and barely ever called. All they ever did was indulge themselves. Once Laura tried to organize a family dinner, but the children canceled on her at the last minute, claiming they had to go away on business. The elderly woman was left alone at the table full of delicious food which she'd spent half a day cooking, hoping to treat her kids. Unfortunately, that wasn't the first time, nor was it the last. Laura's children often promised to come over, but they always found an excuse to cancel on her at the last moment. That hurt the old woman deeply. She always hoped to get an apology from them, but no one ever felt the need to apologize, just as they never felt the need to visit or call her. One day, the woman decided to get some air and go shopping. As she made her way to the building exit, she saw a young man in the hall. He was looking at the painting on the central wall. The drawing featured a beautiful lake, a country house made of wood, and colorful flowers around it. The curious old woman stared at the stranger, who seemed to be engrossed by the scenery. She slowly approached the young man and asked if he knew the place. "I could only see such a beautiful house in my dreams," the man answered timidly, not suspecting that it was the owner of the company standing in front of him. "My whole life consists of endless work, only to be able to feed myself and my mother. The salary that I get in this company is barely enough to cover the groceries." Laura was surprised by his answer, but she suppressed her irritation and laughed. "And how much is it that you earn here?" she asked. "I've been working as a janitor here for over 6 years, and all I get is $800. But I wish I could earn $1,000 because I do my job well. My mother is sick, but the company insurance covers her medical expenses, so I am very grateful." "But still," the young man replied. "I'll make sure that your salary gets increased to $2,000. How does that sound?" Mrs. Castro said kindly. The man was rather confused by the woman's response. "If you could do this for me, then I'd be eternally grateful to you." Laura invited the young man for a walk, and he agreed gladly. Paolo had just finished his shift, so he could afford to relax a little in the company of a nice old lady. The janitor invited Laura to have a bite to eat at a nearby bistro. Laura usually made a point to eat healthy, but that day she decided to break her own rules by eating a hot dog and washing it down with a Coke, and it made her extremely happy. The two of them took a long walk until they noticed a car shop. They saw a Mercedes-Benz sports car on display. The young man was so impressed by the car that he froze in front of the shop. I wish I could get one of those one day, Paolo voiced his thoughts. What would you do with such a car? The old woman asked. Well, my mom had been struggling with never-ending illnesses for many years now, and hadn't had any joy in life in a long time. At first, she raised me on her own. She had to work from dusk till dawn to provide for me. And now I am her only hope and joy. I spend all my money on her meds and vitamins, hoping to win as much time for her as possible. But the doctors recently said that she didn't have over a month left, and I promised myself that before she goes, I'll arrange for a drive in a beautiful, expensive car for her and take her to a beauty salon so she could get her hair styled and her face made up. When Laura heard Paolo's story, her throat went dry and tears welled in her eyes. She had never felt so much love from her own children. You know what? I was just asked to buy a car for the owner of the company. Would you like to take this one for a test drive with me? The woman suggested suddenly. Paolo was very surprised, but his eyes were shining with excitement. He didn't think long before agreeing to Laura's offer. They bought the car, and the old woman told Paolo to call his mother. She was going to take them to see the lake from the picture. Soon, barely managing to curb his excitement, Paolo was already taking his mother to the nearest beauty salon, after which they went on a short trip together with Laura. Having reached the lake at the foot of the mountain, the group enjoyed the unearthly landscape for a long time and watched the sunset over some warm cocoa. Seeing how happy his mother looked, Paolo finally breathed a sigh of relief. He was incredibly grateful to the kind old woman and was sure that it was God himself who sent her to him. The next day, Paolo didn't show up at work. His mother had died. Laura took care of all the funeral expenses and provided Paolo with as much support as possible. To help Paolo live through his grief and get his bearings, the woman took the young man out of town to a huge canyon, known throughout the world for its size and incredible landscapes. When they arrived, Paolo screamed loudly and cried softly, letting go of all the sadness over the loss of his mother. Laura comforted the man like her own son. They cried together, remembering all the unfortunate events they had to go through in their lives. The old woman shared her own experiences with Paolo. She spoke about the loss of her husband and her own children, how she gave them her youth, her love and support, as well as her fortune, how they still depended on her, and how they nevertheless didn't seem to care about her or her life. Laura also admitted that, in fact, she was the owner of the Castro holding and was glad that they'd become friends, because for the first time in the last couple of years, she felt happy instead of lonely and abandoned. The two of them hugged and laughed a lot. It seemed as if two lonely souls met to help each other through some rough times and emotions. Paolo suggested that it was his mother's hard work that taught him to appreciate all the things he had and to work hard for them. And that perhaps, if Laura created similar conditions for her children, they would treat her and what she gave them with more respect and gratitude. At that moment, the old woman came up with a wonderful plan. Laura arranged with the managers of her company to spread false rumors that the company could be going bankrupt. The next step was to inform the kids that the company was on the verge of a collapse, so their salaries would be cut and future interest would be reinvested to pay the staff. The very next morning, the angry children were the first to rush into the office. They hoped to see their mother in her office and express their dissatisfaction in person. But instead, Laura's assistant gave them a letter from Laura, which included the time she expected to see all of them at a family dinner. Paolo's task was to greet the guests, which he did. When the children arrived, Laura wasn't there yet. As soon as the disgruntled murmuring started, the woman appeared in her best dress, sat down at the head of the table, and greeted everyone with a smile, ordering for the food to be served. Her children weren't hungry. They were worried over the news that their rich and carefree life might end soon. They also looked contemptuously at the janitor who was sitting at the same table as them. "I'm glad to see you all. Meet Paolo. He is my friend and assistant," the old lady started her conversation. "It's good to see you all home. The truth is, there's nothing wrong with the company. Sorry about the scare. but I needed to get all of you here somehow." "Mom, did you really make it all up just to force us to rush here?" "Are you out of your mind?" shouted Raul, the eldest of the children. "We have video calls once in a while. I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of it." Anna was annoyed and took her brother's side. "Mom, what you did is simply insane. You're wasting our time," Roberto said. "Now listen to me," Laura ordered loudly. "From this day on, you will not get any preferential treatment in my company. You'll have to work just like the rest of the staff. In all this time, you haven't done anything more significant than the rest of the staff who work hard from dusk till dawn for the good of the company. Only when you learn to appreciate what you have will I allow you to return to your previous positions." Disgruntled children left the house with no choice but to accept their mother's decision. For the next 2 years, they worked as regular employees of the company. But now they treated their mother with love and respect. Soon, Laura passed away. Paolo, who loved the old woman like his own mother, became the new owner of the company. Before her death, the old woman made sure to take care of her friend. She wanted him to feel that his efforts paid off. Laura's children were very sad about their mother's death, but mostly they were sad that they didn't pay her due attention when she was still alive. They had recently reevaluated their take on life and started gathering with their families at Laura Castro's resting place every weekend.